So, another question for 2026 that's very different from 2025. For example, in 2025, one of the driving questions may have still been for you and your business, how do we get people to use AI? How do we teach them about prompt engineering? Or really, context engineering was the best practice in 2025. 2026, it's about which business functions can we transition from human in the loop to human on the loop in our agentic workflows and scaling those workflows up. That allows us to run them autonomously with the human monitoring the health. So, I got a dashboard, it's a supervisor role. Got a dashboard that makes sure things are rolling right. And they're making sure the output is what it needs to be. So, the human on the loop is only dealing with output and with exception handling. Now, exceptions could be something went wrong in the process. It's something that the process was not tuned to deal with. So, it goes, hey, not sure on this. This is a best practice too, by the way. Not sure on this. Handing it off to a person to take a look at how this should be processed so they give feedback to the agentic workflow. The workflow learns, updates, and handles it. Or it could be really, really high liability, high risk, extreme downsides actions. HR related things have a huge downside. Can't get those wrong. Want to make sure that we're not saying something in our marketing that could be, it could get us in trouble. So while there's guardrails that go in place for things like that, we still want to have some human intervention or maybe a particular step in the loop that you want to have a human involved. Like, for example, with one of our marketing workflows, which is really tuned to creating job ads, we still have human in a loop to take a look at what the core information that's been generated is before job ads are written in order to make sure that nothing is being hallucinated, that it's not saying anything that causes a compliance problem, that we're not creating any violations of guardrails we've set up earlier in the process to make sure that we get a good output that is open for recruiting the right person and not being discriminatory, for one thing. So that's one example. So here's things to consider. So the year of autonomous agents. The companies that get those right are going to be way, way ahead of their competitors at the end of the year. The companies that don't are going to have major problems because their competitors are going to be so far ahead of them in terms of productivity, in terms of being able to offer different customer experiences, which is where, as CEO, as business owner, as a business leader, that's where you need to be focusing this year. You need to be asking, how can we automate processes? Where can we implement automated or autonomous agents? Where can we move from people pushing data around in one form or another? And if you're honest, you'll find a lot of forms of pushing data that look like something else. We justify it as another task. Handling emails, for one, incoming communication, scheduling, things like that are pretty basic. How much of that still takes your personal time, even though you've likely delegated a lot of it to a chief staff, an executive assistant, someone that screens the low priority stuff or things that just don't belong in your desk and get routed somewhere else. Which brings me to best practices. So best practices are getting stellar results. IBM reports up to 300% or say that fast 3 times. IBM reports up to 300% ROI for companies that are mastering this, especially this is specific to best practices. And there's one best practice that's turbocharging that, which will be included when we get to. So here's when we say best practices, what that means right now. I'm checking my notes to make sure I give you the right stuff. Now, this is included. This isn't everything. That these are the main hits on best practices right now. It's like keeping agents tightly focused. Instead of having a general agent that does a gazillion different things and has 5,000 tools, the best practice is using more agents that are more focused. They've got really tight guardrails, which we mentioned earlier. So it makes it easy to make sure we're easier to get a better output and to have clarity on what's going on so that we can audit the process. We can explain the process when asked. And if something goes wrong, we can troubleshoot. But to have those smaller agents that are very, very focused, they're not collaborating with other agents. They just have a specific thing that they're very good at. They have a limited number of tools, 5, not 5,000, and they're off and running. They do what they're designed to do. They hand off the output, stop, and wait for the next input. Another best practice is using orchestrators. So when you have these this higher number of smaller, more focused agents, now you have orchestrator agents like supervisors that are making sure that the process is running the way it's supposed to. If an agent gets stuck, to be able to deal with that, work on process health. Agents that orchestrator agents that are tuned more to QA. Think of things that you would normally have supervisors doing in a human run workflow or a human centric workflow. It's one of the new terms that we're dealing with now, human centric workflows, because by the end of the year, if you're a high performer and you're running best practices, you will be dealing with managing and leading teams that are both human and digital individuals, because these agents will be autonomous. Their behavior is a lot like having a junior staffer. How do you treat a junior staffer? And that's going to increase over time. And there's another, adding knowledge graphs to our workflows, to our agents, where we're doing any kind of retrieval of data. That adds a new layer, that adds a new technique, a new technology that dramatically increases accuracy, reduces hallucinations, and makes sure that not just a little bit, but all of the relevant data is being retrieved. Now that's starting to get a little techie, but it's something that is a key question to ask. Your team, whether internal or external, what do they know about knowledge graphs? What are they doing? How can that be applied? What is their thinking on that? As a leader, you need to be asking them questions like that. Human team members focused on workflow results and handling exceptions, not embedded in the process, not spending a lot of their time prompted. We want them working with AI, but it's not about prompt engineering at this point. Now it's about how are they running these processes? How are they working with AI tools to continue to develop more processes? How are they rethinking what they're doing so they can better leverage AI now that they have a couple years experience, right? This all started November, this transformation. Let's step back for a second. This transformation that we're seeing economically in the business world started in November 2022, when ChatGPT went consumer available. Bear in mind, that was something that had been used behind the scenes for a while before that. Let's say a year, 2 years, could be wrong on that. If I am, shoot a comment. Love to find out what the citation is and the actual number. But the thing is, we've had 3 years now, November 2022 to 2025. So hopefully your team has been working with AI for at least 2 of those 3 years. They've got some experience. That experience should bring them at the point now where they are able to think much more clearly and deeply about how AI can be applied in what they're doing to transform the workflow. We talked about this in a previous episode. Don't just bolt on AI. You'll get a little bit of improvement and you'll get run over by those that are leveraging the best practices, what we call the high performers, which is an elite group. It's only 6% according to McKinsey or Boston Consulting Group. Let's keep moving on here. Adding knowledge graphs, having team members focused on the results, redesigning workflows before implementing AI. Kind of touched on that just a second ago there. The companies that get really good results, that top 6%, they are redesigning their workflows rather than just implementing AI. Went through this with different technology over the decades of my career. Saw it with how we were using personal computers in the workplace, how we access data differently, and instead of going through a central data organization where we had to request queries and reports, we were able to do it ourselves, so we could see it, experiment with it, get deeper knowledge of what's happening and how the company's running based on the data, be more data driven. Saw it in late 90s, early 2000s, where we had an explosion of both internet connectivity and new high-powered tools in the product development world. So now here's another time where AI is shifting things, and we're looking, all right, here's a new technology, here's a new set, and this is going to be huge. This is happening fast, as you know, and it's something that is going to be very, very fundamental. It's going to be like electricity, so the experts say. Now, we'll see how that plays out, but use that as a thought exercise. Use that as a strategic discussion. If this is going to be that transformational, how can you do business differently? What different customer experiences can you create? How can you improve products and services or offer totally new services in the marketplace? How do you create more value to the market niche that you serve using AI? Those are the kind of questions as a CEO, as a leader, to be asking in 2026. Executives openly leading AI implementation. Are you the number one user of AI in your organization, or at least in the top? Recently heard a quote about. So this is secondhand. But someone was quoting Shopify, and apparently their chief technology officer is the number one user in terms of volume of output, or would say token count. So data in and data out, he is the number one user a lot of the times when they look monthly at how much AI use there was within the company. Guess what? They're tracking that. CEO of NVIDIA sent out a mandate that every process that can be automated using AI should be automated using AI. These are what leading companies are doing in terms of those that are getting massive value out of implementation of AI. I find it particularly interesting that the CEO of NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, they're the technology that's making all this possible, right? NVIDIA is one of the core, if not the core technology in the explosion of AI tools that we're able to use today. And yet he's telling his teams internally, we have to make more use of AI and automate processes more. Notice what he didn't say. We need to find a way to reduce headcount through AI. That's not the right focus. I've touched on that before. We'll do an episode on that in the future on why that just simply doesn't work. And then clearly defining what, so as let me back up for just a second. As an executive, as a CEO, owner of your company, you need to lead by example. The companies that are successful, that top 6% again, and now top 6% is defined as large companies that are getting more than 5% improvement in profits and revenue. Doesn't seem like a huge number from a small business, mid-sized business perspective, but when you're talking 100 million, billion-dollar organizations, that's a pretty big lift. You can do a lot better than that. So the ones that are there, they have open leadership by the CEO, by the entire executive team, using it, being involved in discussions, setting policy to say, look, this is where we're going. There, it's like, hey, here's the hill that we're charging. Come on, charge with me. Are you doing that, or are you telling other people to do it but not touching it yourself? That won't work in the long run because you will miss so many strategic opportunities. You'll be late to the game. And right now, things are changing so fast. Being late to the game, it's not a good position to be in. That is super high risk, and super high risk in terms of losing your business. Now, next thing that's closely related to that, clearly defining what's unique about your business. And I chuckle a little bit because I can't tell you how many businesses I have walked into over the last 30 years and seen a mission statement, a vision statement, whatever it might be, a unique selling proposition that you could take off of their wall and exchange with 10 other businesses, and no one would know the difference because they're also similar. They're also vague. They are also useless. You need to have clarity. The more specificity that you have on what's unique about your business, what your mission is, how that plays out day to day, the better you'll be able to lead your organization, the better results you'll get from AI, because AI loves specificity and context. So it also gives your teams the context they need in order to look at how do we re-engineer what we're doing here? How do we reorder this? And what can be radically different? And in 2026, the big gains are coming from the non-engineering parts of companies. So this is not an engineer thing. This is not a technical thing. This is not a software or computer person thing. The parts of companies that are getting the biggest gains in terms of contributing to better profitability or bringing more revenue in the door are the non-technical functions within the company. That's part of why you need to be visibly leading this effort. How much? I got some questions for you to consider. So here's some actions. Lead the search for workflows where humans are currently just moving data. Where people are just pushing data around. Are they working? Are they loading data in spreadsheets? Are they moving stuff? Are they doing something that is reprocessed and conditioning data as opposed to analysis and interpretation? And how much of the analysis can be shifted over to an agentic process? Are you taking the lead in these updates? Are you looking at things like how much time do you spend checking sources, checking information, checking your phone. Hmm. Are you on your phone a lot? Not for conversations, not for making things happen, but for checking data, researching, looking at stuff? How could that be automated so that it better serves you? I'm running a process right now that I just recently created, and it gives me some critical updates every morning. So I've got a list of things that I had an agentic process go out and research and prep for me, and it's in my inbox in the morning to start my day with. How can you leverage things like that? How can you take things that your executive assistant or chief of staff is doing that are headaches for them so that they can focus on the things that they're super, super good at? Um, Agents can now handle entire chains on autonomously. We talked about that review. Again, I'm checking my notes so we can be quick here and keep it focused. Pick one. Here's an action. Here's a challenge for you. Pick one personally consuming task, time consuming. Pick one personally time consuming task that you're doing as CEO, as leader of your company, and have it delegated to an AI agent. Work with the people. And this is, I'm not saying go learn the technical details of how to use a tool like N8N or make and create your own agentic workflow. Might be something to think about in terms of having some deeper understanding, but have your team work with you on how do you get that off your desk if it's something that's an annoyance. That keeps you in the game of understanding how your people can use it and gives you perspectives on how to deploy. Also perspectives on how to lead the thinking, the questions to ask so that you're guiding your people. The better your questions are, the better your team can deploy and move forward in the direction you need them to. Dedicate a large portion of your strategy thinking and staff meetings to how your business can leverage AI. How can your business and operations change because AI is available now? One of the things that we did in product development with interconnectivity within companies and between companies in terms of product development is we were able to run concurrent, what's now called concurrent engineering, integrated product development, where we were able to completely reorder how we did things because we were able to get digital 3D images of a product before we started kicking out engineering drawings, before we started doing mock-up prototypes like clay models, or what's now, like the early days of using lasers so that we could cut certain materials, and now the 3D printing, as it's called, being able to do those things. We didn't have to do any of that. Now we could go to the 3D models and have reliability, have manufacturing, have our supplier folks, our suppliers, our purchasing folks all look at what's going on and start a conversation about things way, or, and sometimes we were designing and building aircraft years before we could have done it before. It's a huge shift in how we thought about business and did business. How can you do that in your business, given the tools that you've got now and that you've had 2-3 years to work with these? So here's a reality check. Are you and your executive team top users of AI in your company? Don't answer that right away, but think about this. Talk with your team about it. How much of your 2026 budget has been allocated to AI deployment, AI related upgrades, transformations of parts of your company or the whole company? And here's the big one: training. High performing organizations allocate 70% of resources to people and processes, according to Boston Consulting Group's research. How much of your budget is allocated to processes and people or as related to AI? Not just tech. The tech should only be 20%. The rest of it, and this is a key, this is huge. The rest of it goes into the implementation and the processes, changing those, but also in training the people. One of the key failures in any kind of major change in a company is inadequate training and coaching with the people that are going to be doing their jobs different. There's a whole leading change aspect to that we'll talk about in more detail in future episodes. So here's two things that I want to leave you with. 84% of failures are leadership driven. For AI implementations over the last 3 years, or at least in 2025, 84% of all of the AI implementation failures were leadership problems. Not technology, not people, not suppliers. And this is backed up by Rand Corporation research. This is a number that they released. So here's my question to you. In 2026, are you going to be part of the 84%? Or are you going to be part of the 6% of high performers?